Since the 1970s, action plans were sent to the Canadian government explaining how industrialization was affecting forest life and wildlife. One species incredibly affected by industrialization is the woodland caribou. Industrialization is a major cause for the decline in caribou around Canada. For a long time, these plans were ignored and still are today, especially in Alberta. In the 1970s, the woodland caribou were estimated to have a population of 7,000 to 9,000. Now it is believed that the population is only 3,000. The caribou are most affected by industrialization in Alberta. In fact, the woodland caribou in Alberta are the most at risk for being endangered. How does industrialization affect the woodland caribou? Well, as Alberta's boreal forests are destroyed to build houses and roads, the forest becomes smaller and smaller. The habitat is being destroyed and it is harder to survive. Since there is less space, the caribou become more at risk of being killed by wolves, one of their biggest predators. Since Alberta refuses to make a recovery plan is due to the oil companies. Alberta oil sands are huge and very profitable, but are ruining the wildlife. Sands. Well, it is a form of sand that contains clay, sand, and water, and is saturated with a form of petroleum. It resembles tar, and the texture could be compared to cold molasses. Alberta is one of the world's biggest oil producers, but it is creating a problem in the boreal forest. The oil is killing plantation and creating problems in the Canadian wildlife. 632 kilometers of land have been destroyed due to tar sands and mining.
All caribou ranges in Alberta are no longer sustainable for caribou. See map, red and orange colors indicate non-sustainable caribou ranges. Because of the industrial use of their range, which has resulted in a change from old intact forests to younger fragmented forests, this change in habitat is favorable to moose and deer and their predator, the wolf. The wolves are then closer to the caribou than they would be naturally and use them as prey when they encounter them. Because caribou reproduce much slower than moose and deer, their populations decline. Government and industry have known about this situation for decades, as indicated in the history document attached, and have frequently committed to action to protect caribou range. But industrial use continues on most caribou ranges, and the caribou continue to decline. They should be classified as endangered, but even if they are, it doesn't really mean they will be treated any differently because there are no legal protections and Alberta is very industry focused. I do believe caribou will become locally extinct in Alberta within about 40 years. The most hopeful thing for caribou in Alberta is the Canadian Boreal Forest Agreement, which has the forest industry committed to protecting areas of caribou range. If the forest industry will agree to stop logging in some areas for the benefit of caribou, then it's hoped the petroleum industry will do the same to maintain caribou in Alberta.
We believe that the Alberta woodland caribou should be considered endangered. Woodland caribous are on the verge of extinction due to Alberta's tar sands development, as well as the amount of trees they cut down to make way for this development. This industrial use of tar sands has left very little habitats in Alberta that can sustain the woodland environment needed for caribous. If the caribous are not protected in any way, there is a high chance that they will die out within the next few decades. Currently, there are less than 3,000 caribous left. The solution is that we need to protect the woodland caribous habitat from the growing tar sand industry. Alberta should focus on saving the species instead of industrial advancements. The government, who has been informed of the situation in Alberta since 1970, has yet to put out any plans for the recovering of this species. In order for the situation to change in Alberta, the government must be held more accountable for the continual lack of caribou protection and the increasing amount of tar sands. The caribou must be protected, and this can only be done through intervention from the government.